Time for some papers for you. Let's take a look at this day, our sister publication. Its leading story this morning: federal government declares war on FX speculators as Naira slides to 1,830 Naira to the dollar. Deploys ONSA, CBN, police, EFCC, customs, NFIU, all of this to combat speculative activities. Meanwhile, the president says $10 billion FX inflow coming. Also, the Vice President Shatima says some forces are hell-bent on plunging country into anarchy. Up there you have something from Mr. Idris. Says Nigeria won't fall, remains Africa's giant. Southeast PDP gives party condition on choice of national security. Above the nameplate of this day this morning, the Senate sets up panel to probe former President Buhari over 30 trillion Naira ways and means. I remember last year, about May, this ways and means was 22.7 trillion Naira, which was what the Minister of Finance said yesterday as well. But we'll discuss that later. That's this day for you.
The Vanguard leads with a message to the federal government from the Nigeria's Employers Consultative Association, otherwise known as NECA, as well as marketers. Sean Pride, they say, review subsidy removal, flotation of Naira. List anti-business policies of government, worsening employment index, other causes of nation's economic woes, peg forex rate at 750 to the dollar, oil marketers beg Tinubu. It's a busy front page. Akeredolu, governors, ex-governors, ministers, minister pay last respects. 10 billion Naira fraud. EFCC detains ex-Kwara governor Abdul Fattah Ahmed. This and many more make the front of the Vanguard.
All right, let's look at what the Punch has on its front page. It says Senator Buhari government, MFLA over, that's former CBN governor, over 30 trillion Naira CBN loans. With some writers, they say Senate links food security crisis to reckless ways and means loans under the Buhari cabinet. Panel to investigate CBN's 10 trillion Naira anchor borrows scheme, $2.4 billion forex fraud, others. That picture you're looking at there, motorists lament poor drainage as flood submerges Lagos roads. And on the top mast is state police, governors to appoint police commissioners. Police commissioners bill list conditions for CPE sacking. CPEs can be removed without PSC Assembly's approval. Oyebanji hails, well, Punch journalist excellence at 50. And that's for the Punch.
The New Telegraph this morning has a similar big headline on its front page. Senate probes Buhari others over 30 trillion Naira ways and means. Claims reckless spending cause nation's current woes. Meanwhile, the leading photo for the New Telegraph this morning is that of the group CEO, NNPC Limited, Mele Kyari. That was yesterday at the Public Wealth Management Conference organized by Murphy. You can see the CEO of Murphy, Mr. Armstrong Tekang. At that conference, they launched a 100 billion Naira project preparation fund. At the bottom of that photo, you have a story on why IPOBs against hardship protest in the Southeast. Also on FX volatility, a 12.5 kg cooking gas price is now 16,800 in Lagos, and it's 18,000 Naira in Port Harcourt and Warri. That's according to the New Telegraph. Two more stories at the top there. Fuel scarcity looms as importation drops by 57.4%. And also something on price control. Federal government is threatening to open borders for cement importation.
The Daily Trust leads with claims by the paper that despite the federal government's clamp down, the dollar has hit 1,900 Naira, and the pound, it's now 2,250. Well, they have a timeline of major federal government's measures to stabilize the Naira, and that's what you see on the front page there. But the writers to that story, BDC is that's Bureau de Change, raided, operators arrested, trial and error, not solution, says economist, the Daily Trust.
All right, let's look at what the Guardian, Nigeria, is saying. The Guardian, it says confusion as Naira crisis defies interventions, fuels inflation. 4 in every 10 Nigerians are in debt. Bill for state police passes second reading and the House of Reps. Falana insists on price control as Shetima blames saboteurs for food crisis, and Senate queries 30 trillion naira facility for Buhari and others.
Business Day this morning, it's big story. No pay, no power hits electricity sector. That's on page 2. The leading photo for Business Day you cannot miss. It's showing long queues at filling petrol stations. This was just before the Nigerian Association of Road Transport Owners shelved its strike on Tuesday evening in Lagos. There's also analysis on how Nigeria can curb its what the Business Day calls worst social crisis since 1999.
Let's flip to the international papers. The Telegraph. We have the Telegraph this morning, the Daily Telegraph. Great, we have it. So you have there a picture of Prince William looking thoughtful on the front page alongside a headline which quotes him saying that the fighting in Gaza must be brought to an end. It says that the Prince of Wales' message was coordinated with the UK government but threatened to open a diplomatic rift with Israel.
The Independent National, International, and I think it's Daily Mail also has that story. But let's look at what the Guardian is saying. Has a different story on his front page. It says Labour leader, you're looking at him there, Starmer, faces threat of revolt over Gaza despite call for ceasefire.
All right, now let's bring in Dr. Constance Ikoku, who's a journalist, political commentator, and a Rise News analyst. Thanks for joining us this early morning. Let's begin with one of the biggest stories making waves throughout yesterday night into this morning. If you take a look at this new Telegraph, it says, Senate probes Buhari, others over 30 trillion naira ways and means. The Senate says, look, we don't know what this money was used for. We were intentionally denied the specifics of that expenditure. And as that was happening in the Senate, you had the Minister of Finance at a conference yesterday saying the federal government actually will be auditing, but he still said it was 22.7 trillion naira, which is what we know. So what's the confusion? Where did 30 trillion naira come from? What are your thoughts on this development, Dr. Constance?
Good morning, Nkechi, Adesua, and Ndi. Astonishing news coming from that newspaper. Whether it was over 22 trillion or 30 trillion, the point is that there has been a feeling that egregious infractions occurred under the last administration of President Muhammad. In this Senate hearing, the former Senate President, Ahmed Lawan, was invited, and under his leadership, that money was approved. And can you hear me? There's an echo.
We can hear you.
Okay. Under his leadership, that money was approved, and we remember that he hits, hello?
Go on, we can hear you. Just go on.
Okay, there's an echo over here.
All right.
Under his leadership, that money was approved, and we remember that he would provide everything for former President Muhammadu Buhari to make sure that his administration had what they wanted. And so now we're having to probe that money. The Senate President had also said that they have to probe other intervention programs, which included the Anko Brewers program, and then there was also the over 2 billion forest transactions. And the reason why was that there was the feeling that there was recklessness and impunity with which that government carried on, and that was unacceptable. The Senate President and the former Senate President Ahmed Lawan agreed that something had to be done. Somebody had to be held responsible. And let's not forget that there are other officials that have already been detained, like the former CBN governor, Godwin Emefiele. There are much more that are expected to be also questioned. For instance, we remember the fiasco that happened with the former Minister of Aviation, Hadi Sirika, with Nigeria Airways, and a lot more that is going on. So I think the bottom line is that these probes go on every election cycle after a new president comes into power. And, you know, some monies are recovered, some people go scot-free, and business continues as usual. Why is this unacceptable in a country such as this? I think what Nigerians will be asking and saying is that this should not continue. There is no nation that thrives under this kind of conditions.
Indeed. Well, let's look at the front page of the Vanguard this morning, and you have NECA as well as marketers telling the federal government to shun pride and review subsidy removal as well as flotation of the Naira. Dr. Ikoku, how does this come to you, considering that it is no longer news the subsidies back one way or the other?
Yes, this ties into the general conversation about the state of economy, about the rising cost of food, about insecurity and what the government has to do. It also talks about the flotation of the Naira, the current policies of the President Tinubu administration. How is this affecting or impacting Nigeria? Is it harming us more, or is it going to bring about some progress? So what this organization is saying, that government should actually look at the situation critically. If we need to review that subsidy removal, then we have to do it because of the impact that it has had on every sector of the economy, which I think previously the government and many Nigerians did not understand the depth of the impact that it will have. I mean, all over the world, there are countries that in various areas of the economy of the country, there is some sort of subsidy to alleviate the sufferings of people and to make life more easy. So I think that it's a decision that has to be made by the government, you know, with their economic team. If they think this is something that needs to be looked again, to be reviewed, then definitely that should happen.
No harm in throttling if you're moving towards the wrong direction and you know you would never get to where you're going to. So what you need to do is to turn back. So I mean, there's no harm in doing that if they must do that. But let's look at our sister publication this day. It has on its front page, Idris, Nigeria won't fail, remains Africa's giant. And of course, the lead story there, FD declares war on forex speculators. Naira sliced to, while some are saying 1,900, 1,850, this day is saying 8,830 to the dollar. That is scandalous.
Yes, indeed scandalous, Ndi. I think that on that story, Nigerians have been looking again and asking questions about what is currently going on in the country. I think the slogan of Giant of Africa will no longer do it. We've had this for so many years, but when you look at Nigeria today, it is currently being, or it's currently exhibiting signs, significant signs of a weak state, or near a failed state. We talk about non-armed groups successfully challenging the country and the government, operating, operating successfully. When you look across the north or other parts of the country, why do we have these food shortages? Because farmers are unable to go to farms, again, because all sorts of groups come and chase people from their farms or invading villages and burning them down. And the government seems totally overwhelmed and unable to arrest this. I think that is partly why they're talking about state police, to see how state governors can have the power to police their regions and their states. So slogans will no longer do this for us. We can also talk about the handling of ECOWAS under the leadership of Nigeria. 3 states are no longer there. They've left because of the way it has been sort of mismanaged or mishandled. So I think that if Nigeria wants to continue to remain the giant of Africa, we have to do more than just talk.
So, Ikoku, you mentioned some of the factors that have led Nigeria into this food scarcity or food shortage. However, the vice president said, if you look at the Nigerian Tribune, he says, economic hardship forces hell-bent on undermining Nigeria. He says there are saboteurs working against the Tinubu administration.
Yes, you can make that argument that there are saboteurs in the economy. They've always been there. Vested interests are believed to have held down Nigeria up till now. Those vested interests are not only people working in the private sector, they also include politicians who are very much uncommitted to the advancement of Nigeria. Middlemen who do all sorts of things, recklessly in order to undermine the country. But the government has power. That is why you are elected. That is why you are in government. You have the power to solve these problems, and you have the power to put together a team to work together for the progress of the country. So it's not about giving excuses. They are talking about manipulators manipulating the forex exchange rate, and we have also seen the story that some of these offices have been raided in some parts of Abuja. It is a step that needs to be taken to make sure that this does not continue. But giving excuses, I think, again, will not take Nigeria to where it is going to. The government has the power and the monopoly to do the right thing. Once they do the right thing and take the right decisions and make the correct and appropriate policies that the country needs, I think that we will begin to see some kind of change.
We'll keep our fingers crossed and see how that goes, Dr. Ikoku. Let's flip to the international scene where you have the Prince of Wales, who is finally speaking on the crisis in Gaza. The Daily Telegraph, for instance, say that although his message was coordinated with the UK government, it is threatening to open a diplomatic rift with Israel.
Certainly, that's a powerful story. We know that it's very unusual for royals to comment on political issues, let alone the Israel-Palestine war, which has been really, really topical and very sensitive. And so this could be a landmine. But the thing is that a lot of people are fed up with this war, which looks like an overkill against the Palestinians. And so that is why we have seen massive protests, marches all across the world. The war has also claimed not only casualties in Gaza, it has claimed casualties in universities and organizations. For example, the first black president of Harvard University, Claudine Gay, just 6 months on the job, she had to be fired because she was accused of anti-Semitism and soft handling of the fallout of this on her campus. Across American campuses, students have been highly divided over this war. And then in the UK, again, there was a Labour candidate that had to step down because of the way that he handled the topic of the Gaza war and what he said against the Jewish state, and he was considered to be anti-Semitic. And so William is coming into a territory that is highly volatile. For royals, they've always said, you see them, but they don't speak on this kind of issues. In the long run, I think that the state of Israel, it's unlikely that they will backtrack until they get what they want. It is also true that the U.S. is also reviewing their support for them and saying it is time to wrap this up. There should be definitely a ceasefire. But Israel always gets what it wants.
All right, Constance, that will be it. It's a pity we can't take the story on Algeria dumps Peseiro opts for Bet Kovic. Thank you so much for being on Day.